I've been involved in the PSP world for 2 years. And my wife and I are celebrating our 54th anniversary today. I knew I'd get an applause for that. The guys are probably saying, I can't believe that it's happening. The women are saying, thank God it's happening. Yeah, but either way, you have to excuse me because I take a little time to collect my thoughts. And there you go. So Jenna, how about you?
Thank you for the handoff, Bob, and thank you, Astrid, for facilitating and moderating this. My name is Jenna. I am the daughter of Sally Ann. My sister Beth is here with us as well. We are caregivers for our mother. She's a brilliant businesswoman, showed us how everything was done entrepreneur-wise. We're just as strong as she is, and we are very thrilled to be here to see her show her strength through everything that she's endured since her diagnosis. She was originally misdiagnosed with dementia. She had been sending messages to her primary care physician for a few years about her falls. And I believe that started in about 2018. So in 2022, we received a phone call that we should go check on our mom. We were actually estranged from her for a little while before that. So coming back into our lives and going through this process has been, it's been a little taxing, but her strength is so unwavering, and watching her evolve through the stages of owning her own business as a tax preparer, to moving out of independent living to moving into assisted living twice, and different battles along the way. Oh, 3 times. Yes. She has taught us a lot about resilience, and we're here to talk about her and everyone else that has been affected by PSP. Her diagnosis came in November of 2022, and she quickly retired right after that and moved into assisted living. She's been working with Speak Out, using the YouTube platform. She said it's very helpful, and it helps her with her projection. And she moved from a cane to a walker and now in a wheelchair. So the adaptability of quality of life has definitely been something that is notable in your progress. So I love you, Mom. We'll talk about you soon.
I love you. I love you. I love you.
All right. My name is Taylor. My wife has a PSP. She's about, never quite sure when these things start, but maybe 5, 6 years into this. She's quite weak, difficult to walk increasingly. She has walked with the walker for some time. She participated in maybe a program you all might know of called Rock Steady Boxing, which is a Parkinson's exercise program. It's been very helpful, but she's now too weak to do that. So she's increasingly wanting to remain in bed. So my challenge is to get her up, get her dressed, move her around, let her move around as best she can, and stay active, even if it's just taking a drive someplace. So it's a big change in her life and mine as well. And I don't know how much more I should go on at this point. It's just a difficult time for both parties in a long relationship. We've been married for 45 years. It's not something we welcome, but I think she's keeping a wonderful, it sounds like you are too, a wonderful spirit up despite the challenges that it brings. It's also challenging for our son, who's 31. We had a child later in life, to deal with a mother who's ailing at the same time as he's kind of trying to begin his adult life. So the stress that it puts on him is another part of the picture. And maybe I should just stop talking because I do talk a lot. I really could.
I
could go-
can,
you know, I could fill
I can
this whole
attest to
time.
that from our support group that we're in together. So, and which is
So-
great. We need some laughter because as you can hear, and Marley too, it's a very emotional place for all of us to be on many different levels. And there are days when things are great, and there are days when you just want to crawl under the covers and cry and not go anywhere all day long. And so we'll talk about how we've all dealt with that a little differently, what resources we have found, because I think that's very important is our mental health. So, Marnie.
Hi, I'm Marnie. I had my mother under my care for about 4.5 years. She developed slow speech when she was 75, and then eventually developed some motor symptoms. And she, I think, when things were sort of more clear, she had a very much a PSP CBS overlap because she was asymmetric. Her right side had more problems. And then, so anyway, she eventually lasted about 10 years since her first symptoms. So she was with me for 3.5 years, and then I moved her to a memory care facility nearby for her last 10 months, as it turned out. And we did go through the brain donation process, and her diagnosis was confirmed as PSP. So that was helpful.
Excuse me, thank you. So my husband also had PSP, and that was confirmed through brain donation also. And he passed away 6 months ago. So I may get a little emotional also. He was at home. He had been diagnosed with PSP for roughly 3.5 years, Parkinson's a couple of years before that, essential tremors before that. So as many of you had a similar journey where it starts with one diagnosis and they keep changing as the symptoms rear their ugly heads. So one of the things that I touched on is how do we deal with all of this? Because it is very, not only as a caregiver, but also as the person who has PSP, CBD, CBS, it's not the road that we planned on going. It's not the country we planned on visiting. You know, our road was going this way and we had to quickly go the other way instead. So how are we coping with all of that? And I'll let everybody just spend a second or two and say, what, are you part of a group? Do you go see a psychiatrist? Is there medication involved? And feel free to say whatever you're comfortable with. I was part of several and still am part of several support groups. I see a psychiatrist still. I take antidepressants still. And it's made a huge difference in my life to keep everything on a positive note. Camilla?
I have notes because I'm slow too and thinking and processing. So for me, so it was hard to find a therapist for us. We wanted a marriage counselor and a personal, someone for me. And it was hard to get someone to accept us because, oh, that's a lot, was kind of the quote everyone said. But Stanford referred us to Orange County health psychologists, and they're wonderful. They're experienced in complex medical situations. And I meet weekly with a therapist on the phone, and sometimes my husband joins me. I spend a tremendous amount of time doing art. This is new for me, brand new. We've recently started meditation practice in a group setting. We swim a lot. And as soon as I was diagnosed, I said, I really, really, really would like flowers every week, fresh flowers. So that really brings me joy. And I've met somebody who helps me arrange it, and now I draw them. And it's just been a life joyful thing. So I focus on joy.
Thank you. Bob?
Yes, I also see a psychiatrist, and I see him weekly. Her and Joanne gets to partake in her skills. I do have Medicare. I know you're all really surprised that I'm that old, but I am. I'm 76. And I exercise a lot. I walk a lot. I play golf, kind of, not to the degree that I'd like. But that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Mom just turned 75 in May, and she really does enjoy the activities that are available to her at in assisted living. She does sitter size. They have flower arrangements. There is art. She loves karaoke when she can project her voice. Bingo, that's a big one. Yes. And she is currently on antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication. She has some issues with compulsivity and impulsivity. So that's been helping her with one thing at a time. And again, enjoying time with her grandchildren and with her daughters. We do lunches with her, and we're gonna go for pedicure soon. And one day at a time, Mom.
Taylor?
Well, let's see. I'm kind of torn between talking about my wife and her mental state and spirit versus my own. For her, she's never been inclined to do counseling and kind of poo-poos it. And so throughout this whole period, she really has never wanted particularly to talk about how she feels about it. And I think that it might be good as part of a holistic treatment that everyone talks about how important and interdisciplinary and so on would be kind of a forced session in a way with a counselor of some sort to allow the person without me present to really express how do they feel about this. And I'm not sure she's really ever yet still had that opportunity, although she might well not take it. She just is the type of person who goes through each day and takes what's coming and deals with it. So that's her. Me, the stress of it is somewhat overcome just by the daily details. I have two caregivers now, which developing that over the last 6 months, I put as much energy into managing the caregivers as I do getting their services. It benefits me. So we now have a daily sheet with like every hour of the day what's supposed to happen, and it's pretty involved actually. It takes a while to get that set. So as far as my own counseling, I do have a counselor I've had for some time. So my way of dealing with it is pickleball, Zoloft, and a beer at 5 o'clock.
So love screen. Very good.
So maybe more than one. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Marnie?
Um, in terms of my mother, I think she was blessed with apathy, and so she never showed any negativity or frustration. And she was never depressed or anxious. And I asked her directly when she could speak, and she did not have those. And let's see what else. As for me, I loaded up on help as I needed it when she came to live with me, starting out with caregiver. I think it was 5 days a week, maybe 6 hours a day, or I think it was 4 days a week, 6 hours a day, but she needed night help. So so I pretty quickly hired 2 night caregivers to take turns over the week. So one did 4 days, one did 3 days. And then I gradually increased the day caregiving as needed. So in the last year and a half of her life or so before the care facility, we were probably up to 20 hours a day of caregiving. I hired them myself and paid them directly into the payroll and everything. And then the care facility came in. So I had the support. And it was using my mother's resources. So we were lucky to have that. Let's see. Yeah, that's about, and exercise I think is really important. So I re-signed up with a personal trainer for a couple times a week, and I think that was really helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I realized that I focused on my mom so much. I didn't talk about myself because I don't like to. But same as you, Marnie, I had a big life change through all of this. I took a very big responsibility of managing 2 locations for my company. And in that time, I would only focus on work or focus on mom, and then, different text messages from mom or her caregivers throughout the day while I was working. So I had to find something for myself. So prior to this, I mean, I've also been on Zoloft is great. Taylor, yes. I went through counseling for a while as well. I found a lot of ways to cope with it, talking with a counselor, especially for the estrangement part before we came into being so involved in mom's life. My sister is a very big support for me. We talk things through, but we are looking for, if anybody has any suggestions, we are looking for a kind of a grief / support group for how to navigate through caring for a parent. We did try the support group here through the Brain Network. It's a little different because of the past that we have with our mom, but we talk through a lot of this process, and we're very involved with each other and our mom and make those decisions together. Personal trainer, yeah, every week, 2 times a week. It very much helps.
Oh, I also forgot, I also have a sister, and so she would come. She lives in Washington State, or Oregon, actually. Oregon. We're from Washington State originally. So she would come down for a long weekend every few months, and so then my husband and I would get away for a short weekend away, Monterey, Carmel, Sausalito, those just nearby, but just away. So that was nice.
Part of this whole process too, for both sides, is that anticipatory grief, because you know it's coming and you can prepare, but you don't know what's coming because it's all very, very different. So along those lines, we had caregivers in the home. I think all of you at some point have had caregivers, and some of you have also made a decision to move. So Camilla has moved, you have moved your mother, you moved your mother. If you can touch quickly on what brought you to that decision to move, and how was that process?
Waiting for you to pass the mic over. Forgetting. So our home had very high staircase, long staircase that opened up to, I always have been afraid I would fall. So quickly I had to think about, oh, how am I going to live here? So we focused on trying to build a bedroom downstairs and convert a half bath into a full bath. We engaged, we went down that road. And then on one of our support group calls, I started noticing that caregivers are saying that they were sleeping on the floor. And I asked, why are you sleeping on the floor? It's like, well, because it's, a hospital bed and there was no place for them. And it's like, why plan ahead for my husband to sleep on the floor? And I wasn't ready to plan a bedroom away from him. So it's like, we got to stop that process and find something else. So we looked at one floor apartments, and then long story short, we moved into senior living that has stepped care. And my neurologist said, it is way too soon, Camilla, for that. And I said, I have one choice, one chance to rebuild my social life because I had to quit work. And I want to do it in a community that I'm going to be in for a long time. So I'm really young there, but I have great friends, love the people there, and it was the best thing to do.
So you're still at home.
Yeah,
You haven't moved. We're in the process of selling our house. So
we're in the process of selling our house and moving to who knows where. But, as it relates to the other stuff, we're gonna be in a home away from home. And that's the way it goes.
With mom, it was mom's decision. We talked about it in great length to move into assisted living. We wanted her to be as independent as possible because at the time she could still dress herself and move around, and she just had the assistance of a cane at the time. And when she moved, she was looking for her next forever home, and she was looking for a community since she had to retire from a job that she owned and a business she owned, and everyone that was a client was family to her. So in her apartment where she did live, she had a step going up into it. And with PSP at the beginning stages, it was hard for her to look down and see the step down. So she had frequent falls in her home. We had Farewell to Falls come by and do an assessment as well. And we made changes along the way, but the falls were still continuing, which is why we went into the process of looking at different assisted living centers a little closer to where my sister and I were living at the time as well, so that we could all be together and have quick access should anything happen to her, and also be able to spend more time together. So that was our reasoning and process. And we had top facilities, and it was very important for her to bring a lot of her items with her sentimental furniture and antiques and such. So there was some compromising and a lot of talks back and forth and measuring, but we made it happen. And she's at a very wonderful facility now with roses outside, and she loves gardening, and she has a great group of friends as well.
thank you. And Taylor, you and your wife are still living at home, and that's probably where it's going to stay, correct? Yep.
What we're able to do is move. We have a second story as well, and we moved downstairs into a small bedroom, downsized to a old-fashioned double bed, not a king, not a queen, that goes up and down, and it's actually very comfortable. But we just stay at home. My wife really wants to be with me 24/7, which is fine, and I do feel the same. So we have no plans for her to move out, at least yet. So it's the caregivers come in, and that's where we are.
My mom at home, we had my mom at home for, I think, over 3 years. And before like the year before she came, my parents were both kind of having health issues. And so we did have a ground floor bedroom that could be used. And I had the bathroom changed so that the shower from a tub to a shower, a roll-in shower combination, just in anticipation. So the house was fine, but after 3.5 years or so, there were several considerations. One, I had already visited a few places, and which I think is helpful, just so you know what's out there, the different levels of care, and just so you have something in your back pocket, which I think helps you go on actually at home for longer. And then, but the considerations that I always had in mind was, well, if she needed a lift, like a Hoyer lift or something, I didn't think that that would really work well at home, and I wasn't prepared to deal with that. So that was just a psychological barrier. Another thing was the caregivers that we had. It was also during COVID times, and so there was getting to be a lot of absenteeism, and they couldn't always cover for each other. And so I was back to doing a lot more hours than I expected, and so that was a consideration. Another thing was my husband was starting to complain about not having any privacy at home because there's always a caregiver around, and also not getting much attention. And then the financial aspect. I mean, 20 hours of care is very expensive. And any way you cut it, $250,000 a year is just not a good use of resources in my estimation at the time. And thinking that I couldn't really prognosticate how much longer she'd have. So I had in mind a 3-year plan. Even though she was losing weight under 100 pounds, I just had to anticipate that she might be around for another 3 years or so. So those were all considerations that led me to look for a place. And the hospice agency that we had referred us to places that I looked at, and I found a place really close to home, about 7 minutes away, where I could pretty much visit her every day. So those were the considerations.
And kind of segueing on that, why did you hire caregivers privately rather than an agency? And how did you handle the payroll taxes and all that's involved with that?
When she first came, I did use an agency for a few weeks until I could hire my own. And I just did the calculations, and the agency was very, very expensive. And I decided it was less expensive to find my own caregivers and pay them directly. And I actually found the first 3, I put a detailed ad in Craigslist and interviewed people, and gave them a trial run, and I could tell who was really experienced and who was good. And so that worked out. And then the last one I got by referral from one of the other caregivers. So it was definitely a financial decision, but also with an agency, you don't have continuity a lot of the time. They'll just send whoever is available for that shift. And when someone, at first, for those first few weeks, she was still pretty capable. She was walking and everything. But as time goes on, you realize, because I did use them again later for a period until I could find the 4th caregiver, you have to train each one. And as care gets complicated, it's exhausting having to train the caregivers every time. And so that just wasn't going to work. Plus, rates had gone up with her level of care as well. How did I handle payroll? I think I used a program called, Simple Nanny or something like that, Simple Nanny Tax, something like that. Just a payroll program that could generate a pay stub and calculate the taxes. You do some input, and it was helpful. And I did that, and I did the W-2 reporting myself and everything. It wasn't that difficult. Yeah, it's management, as you said. You do have to manage them, but it worked out.
Thank you. I know that we're running out of time, so I wanted to give everyone the opportunity here there's so much sage advice here from all different levels and places. If what is one thing that you can tell everyone that you found was very helpful, that was important to you as your journey has gone on, that might help someone else that's out there? And I know there's probably 20 at least, each one of you could tell us, but pick one.
I pick art or some creative activity. We believe that it's the exercise and art that I'm doing that has kept me relatively stable for the last 2 years. I never did any kind of art practice, and it's new to me, and it's really enjoyable. So please pick up a brush or pencil.
Exercise. It's great. I'm competitive, and I found a caregiver that was also competitive, and he made me move. There you go.
We'll go with exercise as well. Getting that movement in for the day, laughter and joy, being able to kind of laugh about things that are going on throughout the day. It's a very trying disease, but if you can find the laughter in little things, and make every day fun.
I think that I would second that. Keep it humor, find humor wherever you can. As a caregiver, getting out of the house for a period of time every day, doing something physical is very, that's a real tonic, I think, to it. So that would be what I would say.
I guess I would say it's important to, or it would be helpful to learn to compromise, because there are always compromises in terms of when you have it, when you are dealing with a facility or caregivers or anything. You just understand that there are just going to be compromises.
We do have a few more minutes, so what piece of equipment in your journey have you found that has been the most helpful to you? I know as a caregiver for my husband, I could not have lived without the Sarah Steady to transport him from his power chair to the toilet chair to the shower chair to the bed, anywhere, because he could stand, but he could not really walk. So if without that, he probably would have had to have gone into a boarding care facility someplace, because I would not have been able to take care of him at home any longer.
My walking sticks and the gloves to wear with them and my husband's arm is the best equipment for me.
The Porsche, which is my walker, but it was made by Porsche and is very fast, and it really works.
When Mom was looking for a walker, the U-Step walker was the best one. It had the pull bar that would push down on her. Actually, she could brake as she needed to with whichever hand was more powerful to use. Regular walkers weren't great because of the balance involved. Definitely not a 3-wheel either, as she was very fast with those. So making sure that she had one that you can adjust the settings to kind of slow it down a little bit was very helpful. But the U-Step was the really great walker before she progressed into the wheelchair. Oh, you too? You too. Okay.
I would say a similar thing, a rollator, so-called, which is a walker that can also be used as a transport chair. So you can either walk with it with the brakes, or you can sit in the front and be pushed. We use that quite a lot going to doctor's appointments. So that would be it.
I found a free hospital bed on Craigslist, which, I just paid for transport for, and it was it was called a high-low hospital bed. So it would go all the way to the floor because my mom would tend to try to get up and fall, and so this was great because she could, she couldn't get up from it, but also if she fell, it would just be right next to the floor. So that was helpful. There was another thing I forgot. Oh, the tilt in space wheelchair. So I also got that on Craigslist for like a couple $100s, and they can be several thousand, but it just sort of tilts in space, sort of like a zero gravity chair. And so you can adjust the angle anyway, and she could be comfortable, and she basically lived in that all day towards the end. So
Tilt in space.
Marketplace is also a great place to look for used equipment. And I'm getting the signal that it's time for us to stop. We were going to talk about some home modifications, but I'm sorry, we don't have time. So thank you all so much. Those of you at home, those of you who are here, feel free to talk to any of us during the break or afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marnie, and all of our panelists. Thank you very much. And one of our panelists deserves a special thanks because one of our panelists, original panelists, had to have emergency surgery this morning. So Taylor, we really appreciate your stepping in at the last minute, and nobody would have been the wiser had I not said anything. So thank you very much for